Hi everyone, my name is Chanchal and we are here to present our case study which is critical analysis of environmental footprint of fast fashion and an examination of how regulations can minimize carbon dioxide emission and encourage more sustainable policies for the industry in UK. With my colleagues Ms. Amara Bibi, Mr. Akash Kumar Paresh Bhai Damania and Mr. Mohammad Bilal. We will examine the British Fashion Council as a regulatory in the integration of environmental sustainability and industry profitability. The issue is of pressing the interest with the growing focus of contribution of fashion towards global warming and the mounting demand for policy-driven change. Over the next few slides, we will talk about the facts, context, and the proposals for regulations shaping a sustainable features in fashion. Here, Be Ready to Wear sector has transformed the clothing industry to high-speed, low-cost provision of trends, where the material is provided at very low cost with great numbers. The method, though, has a catastrophic impact on environment. The estimated 10% of worldwide carbon dioxide emission, an enormous amount of textile waste and water usage. UK consumers alone discard 300,000 tons of clothing annually, and the problem is particularly prevalent. The British Fashion Council, though instrumental in guiding the culture and creativity of the industry, still does not have regulatory powers at the present. This case study tries to explore how British Fashion Council can play a more active part in enforcing and advising the regulations to cut emission, attain sustainability, and encouraging the ethical production without making the British fashion brands unaffordable. Here, this slide provides the clear objective and precise targets of our case study. Generally, the objective is to analyze the environmental impact of fast fashion and suggest how British fashion can better control the industry. To meet this aim, we first plan to identify key environment harms in the fashion supply chain, like emission, waste, and water usage. Then, we will explore whether these impacts are primarily driven by customer culture or profit driven business models. Third objective involves benchmarking regulations from countries like France and Germany, which are taking the fashion and sustainability more proactively. Finally, we will recommend actionable regulations strategies such as penalties, incentives, transparency measures, which British Fashion Council could introduce in UK context. Moving on, to explore this topic, we have adopted a qualitative exploratory methodology. The study is based on secondary data sources, including academic articles, sustainability reports, and official publications from bodies like the BFC, WRAP, and Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We use a case study approach, focusing specifically on the UK fast fashion sector and regulatory potential of the British Fashion Council. We have also included comparative element reviewing sustainable fashion regulations from France, Germany, and Sweden to draw out best practices. To frame and interpret the findings, we apply theoretical models like triple bottom line, which balances ecological, economic, and social priorities, as well as Porter's five forces and circular economy principles to assess the industry structure and opportunity for change. Moving on, to understand the issue, we first must examine the context. Here, fast fashion industry operates on three scales, mainly speed, affordability, and constant newness, which leads to overproduction and mass environmental degradation. It is estimated to contribute nearly 10% of global carbon emission, with severe impacts on water usage. And microplastic pollution in UK itself. The problem is magnified. This country ranks among the top textile consumers and disposers in Europe. The British Fashion Council advocates the sustainable practices. It lacks the authority to enforce the compliance across the industry. This leads to our problem statement, the absence of regulatory bodies and binding standards, allowing the damaging practices to persist. To address the climate emergency, voluntary efforts are no longer enough. Formal intervention is required, so it is necessary for regulatory bodies to bring new strategies to tarnish these practices. Thank you. Handing over to my next colleague, Mr. Mohammed Bilal.
Thank you so much. My name is Mohammad Bilal. I'm going to elaborate the environmental harmful of the fashion industry. This shows slide about the environmental harmful the quickly fashion industry rigor. First, the carbon footprints and the making textile rigors and more than CO2 globally and shipping combined. Second, water pollution is a serious issue. Is a toxic supplied at the dyeing, fashing, and typically released untreated into the river, particularly those countries where it's not good for regulations. The UK alone the contribution more than the 300,000 ton of the clothing to landfill and indicate every year like little reuse and recycling. Adding the privilege and polyesters and the cementing fibers such as the time and the wash. The relies microplastic into the ocean and the food webs. Like each of the this is an unsustainable model of the overpollution where the cloth and the made quickly more than the responsible and the ensure or recycled. The next slide is the slide of the uh, describe of the conventional fast fashion value chain is the optimism for speed and price but not of the sustainability like the being with the ultra fast stipulations runway styles different kind of the copies a matter of the day most manufacture of the outsource like developing nation where the low levels cost and the weak of the environmental protections laws allow to ultra fast factions the global plastics and the second steps in the contributions massive carbonation footprint like long distance shipping and the shipping of the like Zara and Shein and the update of the stock value. The compliance the consumer more frequently. Lastly, post customer stage is the controlled by the landfill, which is or the more infrastructure for recycling such a model which is a prohibits is a highly and ethically. The next slide is fashion is CO2 is growing environmental challenges. In 2015, the fashion industry emissions surprise inertially related to the emission of the USA, UK, Canada, and Australia combined totally 1.75 GT is a 60% of the expand of the 2030 and the bringing emission is a 2.80 GTs like higher than is the combined the emissions in countries like the Indonesian, Vietnam, Pakistan, and the fabric carbon impact of the surprise in the both international flights and shipping related to energy consumptions. The next slide is environmental cost of the fast fashion is the strategy. Every year 10 billion new garments are product of the contribution over while the textile waste is over the 92 million ton of the textile waste is generally annually and 87% of this material are to the landfill. Additionally, 60% of the new clothing materials are plastics, adding to the global plastics waste issues. The textile production is also responsible for the generating 42 million tons of the plastic waste, while contributions of microplastic pollutions are no oceans. Unfortunately, only 1% of the clothing are the recycled into the new garments, unsecurity and the current of the recycling process in the fast fashions. The next slide is the British Fashion Council BFC is play of the central role of the guiding in the UK fashion industry, especially around the innovation is the talent development is a recently step by the attention, sustainability, most significantly of the institute positive fashion, like emphasizing circularity, diversity, environmental cares. Yet, BFC in innovative or presently valuable advisory without a formal regulatory powers enforce the change of the industry. It does not. Is through of the exercise combine the influence through the cooperation with the design, retailers, media, and these of the all of things is like a framework the characteristics in the different kind of the UK brands. And I'm going to move on the Amara baby.
Hi, I'm Amara Baby and I'm talk about the H&M UK. H&M UK is an example of the problem with fast fashion and sustainability. It spend a lots of money on it. Conscious line which claims to use organic or recycled materials. However, H&M still produce too many clothes, adding hundreds of new design every month to meet the demands. Pollution level from the company remain high and it has been accused of a greenwashing, tracking customers into thinking its products are more environmentally friendly than they really are. H&M does share sustainability reports, but these are voluntary and not checked by any official group. There are also no penalties if the company break its promise. This show that letting companies regulate themselves it's not enough. The UK need a strong rules, possibly through the groups like the British Fashion Council, to make sure the companies are truly accountable and improving. And the next slide is our viewing of H&M sustainability framework. H&M plan for the being more sustainable is based on good leaderships doing the right things and working efficiently. Important things that affect how the sustainable they can be include how skilled the suppliers are and how important H&M is in the supplier chain and how many steps are in a supply chain and how complex the transactions are and what customer want and government's rules and how much information non-profit organizations can share. And H&M is working to create a fashion for people who care about the planet. They support reasonable and business partners and focus on doing the right things, like reducing waste, reusing materials, and recycling. H&M also encourage careful use of natural resources in the supply chain. They help local communities through the different sustainability programs showing they are serious about building a better future. And the next slide is a consumer behavior. This slide talk about how both consumers habits and companies profits contribute to the fast fashion problem. At first, it looked like consumers are to blame because they want a cheap, trendy clothes. Social media influencers and a fast changing online trending make a people want new clothes quickly and wear them only once. But behind the scene, fashion company purposely design their business model to make a cloth go out of a style quickly and keep extra inventory. This encourage people to keep buying more. Brands like Shein, Boohoo, and H&M release thousands of new items every month and more and much more than people actually needed. And so while customers do play a role, the real issue is the companies trying to make more money by encouraging overproduction. To truly fix this, we need to change how people work, not just focus on the consumer behaviors. And the next slide is a stakeholder mapping. Many groups play a role in a fast fashion. The British Fashion Council can guide change even if it cannot enforce rules. Fashion's brand cause pollution but can also be the part of the solution. The UK government can pass a rule to support a greener productions. Young shoppers care about the planet, but ad and price still affect them. NGOs and media help to push for the transparencies and influencers' opinions. A real change need a teamwork with the BFC helping lead if give more power. And the next slide is a regulatory model for the other countries. In France, has a law that stops companies from destroying unsold clothes and must donate or recycle them. And in Germany, make a fashion brand responsible for whole life of the product and including recycling. And Sudan offer a tax benefit to companies that reuse and repair textile. And in Bangladesh have over 160 eco-friendly clothing factories. And in Italy, it's using recovering funds to modernize and make its textile industry greeneries. The UK has no strong rule like this, so they changed to create a new one through the BFC, the British Fashion Council. Now I'm handing to my next colleague.
Hello, my name is Akash Paris Vaidamania. My topic is a theoretical framework. To guide the analysis and the shape the recommendations, I have used the three key theoretical framework. The first, the triple bottom line, evaluates sustainability through three lenses: people, plant, and profit, making it deal for assessing the balance between the industry profitability and environmental responsibility. The second one is the circular economic model, unrepression sustainable fashions by promoting waste reduction, reuse, and closed loop systems, a concept already embedded in a parts of Europe. Lastly, I have adapted Porter 5 force to evaluate how regulations could reshape recommendations with the fashion industry, favoring brands that provide a comprehensive lens through which to evaluate data, interpret trends, and justify the need for regulation reform in the UK context. The next slide is a description of a four policy proposal. Recommendation policy proposal in the UK targeted at a potentially revolutionize the UK fast fashion sector. To being Amazon's quarters for a major fashion retailers would campaign transparency and effectiveness through CO2 per unit limitations. This could be done through green reporting on an annual basis. The second one is a compulsory labeling, showing the carbon footprint per unit will enable consumer to make responsible choices, as in the example of a France's eco-labeling system. Third, a tax on a unsold stock or waste would discourage overproduction and encourage circular systematics such as a donation or resale. Finally, the British government could encourage innovation through the tax relief on R&D of a more sustainable process and materials. This will be a policy should they be introduced in collaboration with the British Fashion Council, which will be deliver systematically measurable change through the industry. The next slide is about the short and long-term proposal of our recommendations. This is a strategy timeline with a short and long-term proposal for making the UK fashion industry more sustainable. In the short term, it could be that a volunteer action will take the lead, introducing a carbon labeling scheme with a BFC support and will raise the consumer awareness, while investment in the pilot research into a recycling and circular fashion will supply infrastructure, while DEFRA will be investigate self-reporting by brands. As a precursor for a further regulations, over time these voluntary steps will be become legally blinding CO2 limits. Legislative EPR policies and green innovation tax intensive self including sustainability in the school curriculum will also allow further generation to appreciate ethical consumptions. Cumulatively, these steps by steps measure will move fast fashion from exerted to regenerative. The last slide is about summary, conclusion and limitations. In summary, this case study illustrates that the UK fast fashion sector must be formally regulated urgently to meet its environmental influence. While not of the government, the British Fashion Council can be standards and influence debates on a policy. If reference to the other locations, France anti-waste bill and Germany productions obligations and suggestive that influence of enforceable legislations combined with the incentives toward innovations, is transferable. But change also needs to be a multi-phase convergence, education, volunteers, and regulations. This research aside, there is a still limitations gaps in a data exit, as most fashions brands do not disclose the exit emissions and the waste amounts of Additionally, behavioral intent among consumer cannot be transformed overnight. Lastly, we'll focus on the UK. Many findings may not directly apply to the non-Western supply chain constructs and limiting global generalizability. There are the reference which are given on the slides. Thank you so much.
Thank you on the behalf of our team for giving us the